Mike.
I'm Brad.
And this is Ministry Chemistry.
Neutron, proton, mass effect, lyrical oxidation, your irrelevant mass spectrograph, your electron volt, atomic energy erupting as I get all open on pow.
Here we go.
Welcome back to another episode of Ministry Chemistry, where today we are talking about sports.
Points.
And immediately people are like, I don't want to talk about sports. Or they're like, yes, finally, an episode for me.
No, I'm thinking of my friend Ryan.
Who's your friend Ryan? Tell us more.
He's like car guy, mechanic, and anytime he's in the middle of a sports conversation, he's like, yay, sports. He does not follow sports in any sense.
I have a dear close friend who has a husband who's totally into sports, right? And she's like into sports because he's into sports. So she's like the best fan. Got the shirts, got the swag, preps the parties, all this. Last year for Christmas, I got her a shirt that said, "Go Sports." So that she could wear it to any event at any time. She's like, this is perfect.
I
Ryan's
can throw
that-
all of my other stuff away.
Yeah.
Ryan's that guy
No.
who's watching a football game. He's like, yay, home run. You know, he's that guy.
They scored more points than other people.
Yeah,
Woohoo!
yeah, exactly.
So I think it's most appropriate to just start off with, who are your teams? Like, what kind of sports do you like? I think we need to let our people know
I think
who we're rooting for.
I think just one backpedal step here before I go into that.
Okay.
Like, for anyone who doesn't know, we live in the heart of Buckeye country.
Ohio State
That's
the
true.
Ohio State University.
sports.
As I
It's
say
true.
that, I want to throw up in my own mouth.
You want to throw up?
As I say, the
Think
Ohio
I wanna
State
throw up?
University. From Kentucky,
My
I
hands
bleed
and
blue.
praise the Lord.
Wildcats are life, do or die. That's
Wow.
really like, I mean, I care about other teams. Like, I like other teams.
Can I
but
ask a really
everything
snarky question?
revolves around Kentucky sports for me.
I mean, it's pretty snarky.
Mostly basketball and football, which our football team's garbage this year.
And it's not really pointed at you. It's just a general, it's a little,
yeah,
it's going to sound a little pretentious. I'm not going to lie.
I'm not surprised by that.
Okay. How do you feel about cheering for a school team you never went to?
I did go there.
Oh, you went to UK?
Yeah, so
then okay.
shut your face.
Okay, so then it's good. Then it doesn't
I
feel so
didn't-
snarky.
That escalated
First of all,
quickly.
I didn't graduate from there, okay? I
Oh,
did go
okay.
there
Yeah.
one semester. That didn't go so well for me.
Okay.
So I transferred. I did go there. But it's like, I mean, there's two teams you can cheer for in Kentucky, and one of them doesn't count.
Louisville?
Yeah.
No, they're all right in some
She didn't
No.
even say it
some
right.
years.
No.
I did say it right.
No. Trash.
Louisville?
Trash.
I said it right.
You know what's funny, though? Most people, anyone who's not from Kentucky will not understand this or even care. Kentucky fans will cheer for Louisville when they're not playing each other.
Absolutely.
Because they're still technically in Kentucky, which that's a whole nother argument.
Yeah.
But Louisville fans will not return that favor.
Yeah, no.
Ever.
Right. Yeah.
Ever.
So it is a pretentious question, I know, because I don't care if you went to the school or not and you're cheering for them. Like, that's great and good
Obviously
and all
you
that.
do because you asked the question.
No, I always wonder what other people's opinions are about it because I find it interesting. Like, I don't cheer for the University of Toledo. I didn't go to the University of Toledo. Like, I'm not.
How would you?
Go there?
Yeah.
Well,
or cheer
Toledo's
for
a great
them.
little town. Or things like this. But then, like, if I have friends who, like, I have friends who go to NC State, and people, like, deeply rooted in the North Carolina Tar Heels, like, so I'm like, okay, all right. And everybody hates Duke, and that's just the way
Yeah.
of it. That's the way of the world.
They're supposed
They
to,
kind of
especially-
all three hate each other.
Depending on who's playing who, but everybody hates Duke.
Everybody hates Duke, yes.
You know what's funny, though?
Everyone hates Duke.
Even
DidDukeWin.com.
No. Well, that's hilarious. That's amazing. As a Kentucky fan, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think polls have shown that the most hated sports school in the nation is Ohio State football.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is ridiculous.
We have
you'd
the
expect it to be
most-
Alabama football or
No.
even USC during the Pete Carroll days, right?
Listen, I didn't realize this. I didn't care about Ohio State until I moved to Columbus.
And you still kind of don't.
No, I care about them negatively.
Oh, okay.
Like I was
I have
indifferent
negative
about
care
them.
for them.
Ohio State has the most annoying fan base on the face of the earth.
No,
No,
that's not
no,
true.
no, no, no.
No
and
way.
and that's from someone who
No.
lived in Lexington, in the heart of blue Wildcat country.
Yeah, y'all are
We ha-
pretty
UK has some
terrible.
annoying basketball
you really
fans.
do.
I'm not gonna lie, but Ohio State football, who's worse? You said no, they don't. Who's worse?
Who's worse as far as football fans are
Fan base.
I would say Alabama.
What?
Yes.
Well, that's because you have a diehard Alabama fan living under your roof.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's in your face.
I will say.
Would you have said that before Hayden?
Yes. I don't know.
I will
don't know if I
say
would.
that I was at the Ohio State-Texas game when Texas came to Columbus.
And won.
And we
lost.
We lost. We lost. But my point is,
that's another conversation. If you haven't gone there, can you say we?
yeah, well, yeah, right.
That is a pet peeve of mine.
See, I knew something would strike a chord.
That is.
But wait, I will say, in defense of a small snippet of what you claim that we're the worst fans.
I'm just saying.
I was
show
really
that.
sad at what I saw other people say and remark to Texas fans as we all left the stadium. Like Ohio State was not kind. Other Ohio Staters were not kind to Texas folk. And maybe it was the crowd I ended up like the mob I was walking with.
I've seen that
But
firsthand,
my friends and I
too.
were like, this is not us. We're so sorry that someone has just
I
said
remember
this.
one of the first times I went down there. Now this was in my as I refer to them PJ days, pre-Jesus.
Oh, okay.
So me and my buddy went down to
It's your pajama days.
Well, we went down to tailgate at
Mm-hmm.
this bar that's close to the campus. Everyone knows the varsity club,
Mm-hmm.
and they were playing Penn State. And there was these like probably 5 very pretty like Penn State college girls wearing their Penn State jerseys, and I saw them on the sidewalk asking one for directions, and they basically just like gave them a finger and refused to help them. It's like really,
Help
and that
someone
like
out.
upped my
Hatred,
dislike
yeah.
for Ohio State.
Okay, so you're all UK all the time. Any pro sports, any pro teams?
Yeah, I mean, technically I'm a Colts fan. It's
Well,
been
that doesn't
hard
sound
to be.
real.
Well, it's like I
technicality.
jumped on the Peyton Manning Colts bandwagon.
So you're a Peyton Manning
I
fan.
I am a Peyton Manning fan. Like as far as pro sports go, I would say really the only team that I have started cheering for more religiously is the Blue Jackets.
Mm-hmm.
It's home.
Yeah.
It's the only home team I like. You know.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm a sports hater more than I am like an avid fan.
Really?
Yeah, like I can't stand the Patriots. I can't stand the Steelers. Like it's more fun to cheer against those teams than it is to cheer for my team.
Okay. All right. Brad, what about you? Like,
Baseball is just painful. I'm sorry.
oh, I love baseball so much.
I mean,
Oh, I
It's-
love baseball too.
it's like paint drying.
It's actually
No.
not. It's slightly more
Yeah.
active.
In fact, I had a friend and they just got Hulu Live and like ESPN2, and there's this like stats tracker, which I'm like, I have no idea what that is. And
Baseball loves numbers.
It's so
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Like they'll show you like the percentage of pitches that go like more vertical than horizontal in the target
Nazarenes would
zone.
be
and-
great baseball
and,
fans.
Baseball Nazarenes. We love our numbers.
Nazarenes are to the church while analysts are to baseball, right?
I grew up. My dad was born in Illinois, so I grew up a Chicago fan. All Chicago, all the time.
Sox, Cubs.
I'm a Cubs guy. I'm
Okay.
North End.
Hawks or Jackets?
Before the Jackets, I was a Hawks fan.
Yeah.
Once the Jackets came in, all Jackets all the time. If the Jackets aren't in the playoffs, I quickly switch my allegiance. I do have a Hawks jersey.
This is
So-
hockey for anyone who has no clue
Yeah,
what we're
I'm
talking
like-
Sorry, Blackhawks.
Blackhawks, Blue Jackets.
the Jets and the
Blackhawks.
Sharks. What?
But as far as pro is concerned, I'm a Bears, Cubs.
The Bears.
I'm not a basketball fan, so
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Well, again, it's like now I just cheer against whoever's playing against LeBron,
Sure.
whatever team he decides to be on.
Well, a good buddy
we
of
need to have
mine.
Aaron in here because he just roots for LeBron wherever he goes.
Aaron's a friend of ours.
that-
He's one of the
our
producers.
producer.
Yeah, he's great.
One of the
Super
producers. We say that like
It's
we
true.
have a team
I
of
know.
producers.
And in the wings, through this plexiglass mirror, there's a whole team of people. Like,
So what about you?
yeah, no, I'm a huge Ohio State fan. I have been since the fourth grade. Mrs. Valborn was my fourth grade teacher, Linda Valborn, and she was a huge Buckeyes fan. And so I've liked the Buckeyes ever since then. She was a big influence on my life. So see, you can influence young people. And I did
know.
go to Ohio State, the Ohio State
I'm actually
University.
trying to decide if we need to move before my kids are old enough to like become sports fans.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
Because my mom's like, "What if your kids go to Ohio State?" I'm like, "Ugh." It
Yeah.
just makes me like, I want to take my own life.
So big Ohio State fan. I love the Reds. That was the
That was
first
harsh.
major league game that I went to of any pro sport was a Reds game, and Riverfront Stadium before we had the Great
continue to
American
disagree.
Ballpark. And,
I've never been to Great America.
oh, it's great. It sits right on the river and go on a Friday
Oh,
to shoot fireworks.
I went all the time when Riverfront was around.
Yeah.
That's another team I hate on. I'm sorry.
The Reds?
Yeah.
That's okay.
When it goes back to the 90s.
I love my Red Leggings.
I was an Oakland fan.
Okay.
Like back in the Canseco.
Like when Brad Pitt was the manager of the team?
No, Canseco and McGuire. Shut up. Stop. Canseco and McGuire. And then they got swept by the Reds. And was it 91 series? Yeah.
And so here's a fun fact about me. If tennis is on, I love watching tennis.
I like tennis.
I love watching
Except
tennis.
when the girls like scream.
Yeah.
Like Maria
You have to turn it
Sharapova.
down.
Yeah.
Like, is that
I'd rather
necessary?
watch curling than tennis, but whatever.
Well, and then the ultimate thing every
curling.
2 years,
I'm sorry.
I am a huge fan of the Olympics.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
Winter, summer, it doesn't matter.
I'm more of a winter guy, but yes.
I love the Olympics. I love the internationality of it all. I love just the ridiculous sports to the really great ones that people are like, I just love the Olympics so much. So much. I follow the Olympics on Twitter. Like, it's so great.
One of the things that annoys me about the Olympics.
Me? Oh, okay.
No,
The Olympics.
like several sports that America would just like crush the rest of the world at are basically non-existent, if at all. Like football. Golf is not an Olympic sport either, is it?
Yes.
It is.
It is.
That's recent though, right?
That's recent, yeah.
Like just the last one.
You saying
okay.
the phrase that America would crush the rest of the world in, that's why people hate us.
I'm okay with that.
That phrase.
I'm okay
Yeah.
with that.
So let me tell you
Like
this.
as a Buckeye fan, you should be okay with people hating
Yeah,
you.
I know. So
Like, check out the scoreboard.
So here's an Olympic story that's going to be a great segue into our conversation today. I was coming back from a youth trip. We, if anyone's ever heard of Big Stuff Camps down in Florida, a church that I served for a few years, we took students to that. And on our way back was on a Friday of the opening ceremonies of the 2012 Summer Olympics, all right? And there was a huge storm that came through the area and took out all the power. And I'd set my DVR back when DVRs existed, right?
They still do.
To record the opening ceremonies. And I got home and I had no opening ceremonies. And all day Saturday, we'd just spent a week at camp with kids, right? And all day Saturday in my like hazy, I'm exhausted phase, I'm going online. I'm looking up foreign websites to try to find it because there's no replays and I don't have it. And like, and finally I posted something on social media like, anyone tape the opening ceremonies? I'm like desperate at this point. And then I had a friend go, yeah, you can come over and watch it. And I was like, oh, thank you. And so Sunday night after church and youth and all that, I went over to a friend's house and I finally got to see the opening ceremonies. Oh, I was so sad.
I'm not even going to ask you this question because I already know the answer, so I'm going to ask Brad.
Oh, okay.
And I'll probably know the answer.
That's good.
World Cup or Olympics?
Man.
Oh, Brad's such a big soccer guy.
No, that's why I asked. For me, it's like it's World Cup all
'Cause I would
day.
pick the
Like you could just stop doing the Olympics.
Because
and I'd be
the
okay.
World Cup exists in the Olympics in the soccer category.
Yeah, I mean, World Cup,
yeah.
and the is it the European League?
You're talking about soccer, right? Not rugby?
Yeah, because we really needed to clarify that.
Yeah, we did.
World Cup and the Euros, probably they're 2 years apart.
Yeah.
That's probably where I go just because of my background in soccer and every chance. I mean, I used to record every game of the World Cup.
I wasn't that into it.
Oh man, yeah.
There's a lady at our former church who went to 3 World Cups in a row.
Wow.
She saw England, USA play in, I think it was in Johannesburg.
That's awesome.
Amazing, right?
That's really cool.
Yeah. Anyway,
Those experiences.
yeah. How cool is that? I
would
can't
be
wait
sweet.
till I'm retired and my kids are grown.
Will you have more money then? Because that's all I hear when you say this woman's gone to 3 World Cups. I'm like, man, does she also fund your entire church? That's incredible. Like,
Well, she's retired and back into the workforce. So
Yeah.
double dipping.
okay.
And her-
Okay.
Kids like grown. So, yeah.
So the reason we're talking about sports today is to have the great conversation, sports and church. How do they mesh? Where is their tension? I think one of our favorite kind of things is when a preacher says, "I heard you all yelling yesterday at the game, but this morning in church you're sitting quietly with your hands in your laps." And I'm like, it's different.
I was just gonna ask that
but
question.
Is it?
Well, I thought about this before. I was saving it. Like, would we really want church to be like an Ohio State football game? Like, how would we react?
They serve beer.
They do serve beer now, which I still don't know how I feel about that. But
yeah, but what if? I mean, in our church, what if Pastor Phil got up to the pulpit and someone like started
Pastor Phil,
or someone started the wave,
Yes.
Or if we had Pastor Phil like run through, the paper banner
yes.
coming up to the stage.
That would be awesome.
Or hitting high fives all the way down.
Pyrotechnics.
Right?
Then it would honestly. A better comparison would be like WrestleMania than a football game.
Yeah, put two pastors head to head.
That's a whole other conversation.
And have the congregation cheer, like who makes the better points and the better arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a church, I think, in Cincinnati, and they do a huge Super Bowl Sunday worship. And they've done this. They've like pit some different pastors up on the stage against each other and some different like question answer sort of things. And the whole church rallies around it. They love it. And it hypes everyone up.
Well, I mean, that goes back to what you said. I think you talked about it in a former episode. Like, should church be fun?
Yeah.
I think it's okay. I mean, that's not like the primary point, but it's okay to be fun.
Well, let's draw the parallel. Like, yes, sports are fun, but they're engaging, they're inspiring. Think of your most inspiring movies that you watch are typically either, at least for me, like war related or sports related. All right, there's something about people coming together for a common purpose and goal against a common or shared enemy. And that is what the church is.
So I have a question for thought for both of you, but we'll see how quickly Brad processes. I think one of the divides is in sports, we don't know the outcome. There's a tension in not knowing the outcome. We know the outcome. We know the outcome of a church service.
Interesting.
If we believe in Jesus, we know the outcome, period.
Right.
At least in some sense.
So
there's no tension in not knowing the outcome that's building up that emotion and excitement.
Well, this just took a turn. So then why do people come into churches or live with Jesus in tension and unknownness and fear?
Well, I mean, so do you...
I need to come every week to be reassured?
It sounds like you disagree with that thought.
I don't disagree with the thought. I agree with the thought, and yet I still sometimes know that, like, I just need to hear it again.
What do you think, Brad? Do you think that's part of the equation of... I mean, obviously, so Brad and I have gone to Blue Jackets games before, and you stand up and cheer, and then you're let down because the Blue Jackets were up 3-1 and they gave up 3 goals in like 30 seconds, and we've seen that happen before.
We've seen it.
But yeah, I mean, do you think there's an emotional tension in not knowing the outcome?
There is an emotional buy-in by every person that's there. Do we have an emotional buy-in in the church?
Is it a different buy-in?
It would be a different buy-in for sure.
Well, and okay, let's run with this thread. So let's say you're an Ohio State Buckeyes fan and you just constantly win. I mean, you rarely lose, right? Like, when was the last time we lost?
Or you're a Kentucky basketball fan, same context.
Yeah, is it? Okay.
You only lose in the Final Four if you're an Ohio State football fan.
There it is. Okay, thanks. But and so you see people get complacent about watching sometimes. And they take it for granted.
Yeah, like what is 76-5?
Yeah, I really like Coach Day and that he's running up the scores. I don't care. I've had enough of this squash the talent.
But but to what you're saying, it'd be interesting to see the ratings like first quarter, second quarter, third quarter.
That's right.
People are done.
I think that game.
You know the
it was
outcome.
either that game or the game before it. And it was rainy too, and that always affects, and it affects church attendance too when it's rainy or snowy or whatever. Yeah. But by third quarter, it was crazy empty in the shoe. The shoe is the stadium for the Ohio State Buckeyes, for anyone who doesn't know. But my point is, when you already know the outcome, you don't come to a place where you're like constantly hype about it unless you come to a place where you're constantly hype about it. So are we engaging a congregation? Are we creating a culture where there's hype around this truth every week?
That's a good point. I'm thinking though, even when Michigan sucks, which Ohio State fans love, even when Ohio State fans are pretty much assured that they're going to destroy Michigan.
Yeah.
People will show up to be a part of the atmosphere, to be a
Yes.
part of that game, even with an assurance of the outcome. And that's kind of a piece of the church puzzle. You know, even knowing, like, okay, we're going to sing 3 songs today, and we're going to have prayer, and we're going to have announcements, we're going to have a sermon, and we're going to dismiss, and we're going to have a cup of coffee and a donut beforehand. Even though there's a rigidness to that, there's still a piece of longing that brings people in. Well, I think what we're talking about, the discrepancy, is the emotional tension and the excitement.
Yeah, but you also have to weigh in. Why is it that people come in?
Well, I mean, community first and foremost, right? I mean, what percentage? This would be a good poll to take. What percentage of people do you think come to church for community versus the percentage that come to be in the presence of God?
Oh, and can we create a third category? How many come searching and wondering, and I'm just at my wit's end, or I've had this experience this week, and the first place I thought to come this morning was a church.
I would. This is a little bit of cynic coming out. I would say that number's close to 0.
I would say it's under 5% if I'm doing percentages.
I would bet you 75% or more of the church, if polled, would say they're here for community and fellowship.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree.
And the other piece of that is, if we do create a culture that's constantly hype, constantly on its feet, cheering, all this, does that person who's coming to seek go, oh, this is not meeting me where I am? Like, I don't know the end story yet, and I'm struggling, and this place is crazy, right? It's like converting a fan in a sports scenario.
Well, and I think that's the draw, and that this is a separate conversation that I think we're planning to have. That's the draw of creating the hype and the big atmosphere and trying to create that.
To show them something different.
So I get that, because if you went to 2 Ohio State Michigan games, one's a blowout, one comes down to a last-second field goal. Which one is more memorable?
The last-second field goal.
Yeah, exactly. Because and that's not just because of the game itself, but the atmosphere that is created by that game and by the emotional tension that's created of that last second not knowing the outcome. It's totally different. So you get the draw of why churches are trying to recreate that in some aspect. That's like Brad talking about switching the chair setup at youth group. I mean, it's something simple, but it's trying to, and I'm not knocking. I totally get that, and I agree with it. It's manipulating the environment.
Well, yeah, and so I'm so glad that you changed the word recreating to manipulating, because in some respects, it's what you're doing. You're creating a space, right, for God to show up. But my struggle with that is there an element of hype that's in constant existence in my life? Because there's an element, like Jesus is constantly existing in my life. I constantly have that hope and that promise and know the end story.
Well, and again, I go back to if you took a church poll, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Brad did the message on Isaiah 6, where Isaiah encounters the presence of God, and I interjected with the students, and there's a little bit of back and forth going on. In the Jewish world, when they showed up to the temple, they expected God to be there. That's where God lived. We don't show up to church that way.
Yeah, right.
We
I
just
hope
don't.
he shows up today.
And we preach that way.
Or
we
I hope
pray
they
that
feel
way.
him today.
God, fill this place with your presence.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
I mean,
Already happened.
Like, why do we pray for that?
Yeah.
Even as pastors, why would we ever pray? And guilty, I've done it. Why would we ever pray for God to fill this place with his presence if we believe this is the house of God, that God dwells here in some manner that is beyond our understanding?
So would a more, biblically accurate prayer be, Lord, thank you for already being here today, going before us, sitting with us, versus inviting him in? Or is there something about inviting him in that's also biblically sound? Because it doesn't mean you're praying wrong or thinking wrongly about God.
Well, and I mean, that's a good point. And maybe I should backpedal and say, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong about praying that way, but even praying that way, there's more of a hopefulness than an expectation. Shouldn't we expect that not only God is already here, but God is going to continue to not show up, but manifest himself as we gather, as he promised he would. Mm-hmm. When you're gathered together, I'm there with you. Okay, awesome. We're expecting that. We're not hoping for it. We're expecting it.
Well, and is there something to preparing your heart for worship, like we prepare for games?
Oh, for sure.
You know, as you get ready in the morning, and there's, you know, one of my favorite stories, and I hope I never forget it, is when I was in Haiti, and we walked into this woman's home, and she put on a cardigan. She might have owned 3-4 articles of clothing in total. But because we were going to pray for her, because we were essentially the presence of God there, she felt the need to cover her shoulders. And the same was like when we went to church in Haiti. They take their shoes off, their street shoes off. They put on nicer shoes to walk the town we were in, at least. They put on their nicer church shoes. But there was this preparation and this reverence held for the space they were walking into and the presence of God they were going to encounter there. It wasn't like, maybe I'll change my shoes because he might show up. It was, you change your shoes and you walk in because you're in the presence of, you know, you're standing on holy ground. And it was beautiful. And we do the same thing for game days.
That's a great point. And I think that is maybe something missing that churches could tap into when you relate it to the sports context. Like, when we go to a Blue Jackets game, Brad, you're much more into it. If you got your jersey on, you got your, well, it was a Bob jersey, I think, but maybe that will change.
No numbers.
But if you got your jersey on, you know, or some people like paint their face, so they go all in. Like, I've gone to UK games, and I've got my hat and my jersey on. I am part of the team. I've prepared myself to be part of this environment.
And you wouldn't think to not.
Right. Versus, like, if I went to a Blue Jackets game and I just got off work, so the only thing I've done is, like, maybe take off my tie.
Yeah, people don't do that.
I'm not as much into it.
Right.
It creates a different environment. So maybe we don't ask for people to come in here and behave the same way they would at an Ohio State game. But I think you can tie that analogy pretty easily of how you prepare yourself to be in a different environment.
Well, you feel, going back to what you said, you feel a part of the team.
Yeah.
You would never, I've always tried to make the analogy of what would it be like to go to an Ohio State game, a Blue Jacket game, and act the way you do at church. Would you feel as much of a part of the team?
Sit and receive.
Are you helping, quote unquote, the environment by sitting the way you do at church?
Engaging the way, maybe not maybe not being as vocal, or
that is a very, very interesting point, because no one I keep using the Blue Jackets game because that's something Brad and I have done together.
Yeah, you keep mentioning how you haven't invited me. Yes, I keep hearing that.
We don't know.
Yeah.
You're welcome to come.
No, go ahead
with
your
come.
point. It's
no,
fine.
you really should come. It's pretty awesome.
Okay.
But what I'm thinking is, okay, so nationwide seats 30,000 people.
Nationwide is where the Jackets play.
20?
17 and a half.
Okay, so 17,000 people versus the room we're sitting in right now is where Brad and I go to church, seats 500. Okay? No one at a Blue Jackets game in Nationwide Arena thinks my voice is not going to contribute to this, so why scream and yell?
Yeah, everyone screams and yells.
Everyone knows
Like,
that my voice adds to the collective voice of cheering for our team.
And it is important.
That is the complete opposite of a church environment.
Yeah.
And you believe your voice can change what the refs just said on the ice, too.
Yeah, you believe the players can hear you,
Right.
even if you're sitting in the rafters at the nosebleed, you know? You're yelling at the players, you're yelling at the ref, whatever.
Yeah, well, and in case anyone doesn't know this, Brad and Mike and I are all white people. And I say that because there's a very different culture in a predominantly white church. Well, and I think about when I've been able to worship with a predominantly African American community, it's such a different experience. Or even like the Haitian community. Like it's a vocal, it is a physical worship presence, and it isn't just sit. You do believe your voice is heard, and you don't mind. Like, you speak it and sing it, and it's beautiful.
That's the missing element to me in church. I mean, there's a lot of things we could tap into this analogy, the sports and church analogy. But I mean, as I'm processing it, that is one missing element. Is no person, not enough people think that their voice carries weight when it becomes a collective voice.
And it does.
Like, I mean, raising hands or going to the altar, or all those things that we place into a church context.
Or shoot, high-fiving strangers at a game, right? High-fiving, fist-bumping, hugging the people around you, like ridiculous people that you don't know.
Yeah.
Getting to know the people, if you have if you have season tickets and you get to know the other season ticket holders around you. How often do we not necessarily do that in our church settings? Like when it comes to the passing of the peace or the time of fellowship or greeting or however you call it in your church, people are like, oh gosh, please let these 2 minutes go fast.
We don't have it anymore.
You know, I know we don't really have it in our church. And when we did, I had a friend come and goes, was this your idea? No, this wasn't my idea. We did it on one random Sunday. It was super funny. Why do you hate people? You know, but seriously, and do I get to know the people sitting around me on a Sunday morning? No, not often. Not like intentionally, like as a season ticket holder of a game. So this week, these are our questions. How do sports parallel church? How do you approach church differently than you might approach? And if you're not a sports fan, you approach, the hobby or the thing that really piques your interest and strikes your fancy and engages you in community in your favorite ways. For Ministry Chemistry, I'm Renee.
Still Mike.
And Brad.
We will talk to you next time.